Welcome to the Program Design Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Monique, teacher and curriculum writer turned program mentor and business strategist for coaches, educators, and online experts. Whether you're looking to create your first ever group coaching program or scale your current offer for more freedom, revenue, and consistent income, this is the podcast for you. Here you'll find practical strategies and encouragement mixed with a bit of manifestation and intuition to help you grow and design a program you absolutely love. Let's dive in. Welcome to this first episode of the Program Design Podcast of 2026. I am so thrilled to have you here with me, and I have to say I am so happy to be back. My first day back from the holidays at the time of recording this episode. And in today's episode, I want to dive into my word for 2026. And the reason I want to share it is I thought about sharing my word in 2025, but it didn't really feel like it was quite the right time. And I wasn't 100% sure of my word. And so I kind of let it be for a little bit. And I wasn't sure if I really wanted to share it or not, because I always want my episodes to be really, really useful for you. But as I spent some time away from my business and really got clear on what my word is for 2026, I know that oftentimes the lesson I needed to relearn this past December is one that I know a lot of my clients are working through, that I coach people on often. And it's something that I had to remind myself of over the last few weeks. So I think this one will be really relevant for you too, likely if you are anything like most of my clients, or if you are a client listening to this podcast episode. So I want to dive into my word for the year. And I'm going to be sharing some of the lessons that I learned over the last few weeks. And I think they're going to be really relevant for you in your business as well. So just to set the scene for you, this is my first day back from the holidays, from Christmas break or the holidays. And it feels so lovely. I don't know about you, but I wanted to fully declutter my house. I didn't get to every single nook and cranny, but I got to a lot of it. And it is feeling so calm and like fresh today and so quiet, which is amazing because I don't know about you, but I did not spend hardly any moment alone over the last 2 weeks. So it is so nice to have a quiet, clean, calm house for this first day back in January. And at the time of recording, I am batching a couple of episodes because I want to get into more batching in 2026, which is something I used to coach my clients on, my teacher clients. And we had a really lovely holiday overall, but my husband did get sick. And so I was pretty much solo parenting. He got quite sick for part of it. And we did get to see my family, my husband's family. My kids had a ball. They did not want to go back to school today, but I am very much ready to be back in the routine and thrilled to be here and recording this podcast episode for you. So this word that I chose for 2026, at first my word was going to be scale, which is funny because that's the word I often have for my webinars, for my workshops, is scale. So if you've come to any of my trainings, I'll use Scale Pass one-on-one or Scale Your Group Program, because that is a word that really resonates with a lot of my clients, my potential clients. People often tell me that they want to scale their business. So that's part of the reason I use it. And it's something to consider as well, as use the words your clients use in your messaging as a side note. And I thought about the word scale because I feel like, I've got a lot of the infrastructure in my business now. I have two main programs. I have my core main offer, which is signature program design. And I have kind of a stepping stone offer for people who aren't quite ready for that yet, which is called pilot program design, which helps you launch your first ever group program, your first round ever. And I was thinking about using the word scale because I wanted to scale those programs, but it wasn't really quite right. And I wasn't sure why, because I do have the infrastructure and the systems in place to be able to grow it, to grow both of them. But I wasn't quite sure why that wasn't quite it. And I just let myself take some time off over the break to really just reflect and think about what I wanted to do next year. I was actually chatting with one of my friends in my mastermind this morning, and she is a past teacher like me. If you've been listening to the podcast for a little while, you know that I used to be a teacher. And she said, one of my goals in my business is to take 2 weeks off and fully unplug. And like I used to do when I was a teacher. And I thought, yeah, that's totally the energy that I was in this break, which is challenging. I don't know about you, but like what you did before you went into business. But it can be challenging to take time off in your business because like there's no built-in breaks like there are in teaching. Like I could be working all the time. And the winter is like the one time of year where it's, I think, common where everyone is taking time off at the same time. So it did feel easier. And so I was really, really reflecting during this time off about, is it the word that I actually want to use? And something felt off about it. And I think the reason that I thought about scale, I thought I could expand, wasn't quite right was because I already felt maxed out at the amount that I was already working and the amount of time that I was already spending in my business. And it just felt like I was going to be scaling more of the same. And it wasn't quite where I wanted to be. So my word for 2026 is going to be overflow. And I want to share a little bit about why that came to be and why scale was not quite the right word, some of the lessons I relearned and how you might apply this to your business too. So at the end of 2025, I had doubled my client load, which was great. And I had so many one-on-one calls. Between doing a bunch of market research calls with my current clients for my signature program design, I offered them all a one-on-one call, an extra bonus one-on-one call in my signature program design to do some market research. And I had no idea that everyone would take me up on it. I thought maybe 5 people would, but everyone did, which was great. But it definitely added a ton of new one-on-one calls. Plus in pilot program design, because it was my first ever round, I did more one-on-one calls. Plus I actually brought in some new one-on-one clients. I do, generally speaking, if people are just starting out with me, I offer intensives, which are a smaller package of one-on-ones. With me, it's 2 one-on-ones, and we focus on something really, really specific for those two calls with action plans and everything. And I had brought in all of these clients and everyone was getting a one-on-one. And my days were back-to-back calls. Every single day I had at least a few calls. And I just kind of was getting used to it, but I was feeling like I was racing through my day. Like I'd wake up and get the kids ready to go, and then I'd race through and I'd hardly have time to exercise. And I have a walking pad that I used this morning. But I don't ever use my walking pad if I'm on a client call, obviously. So I wasn't walking, I wasn't exercising, and I just felt like I was racing from thing to thing and trying to fit things in. And I even wanted to batch record some of these podcast episodes for my time away, but I just could not manage to add that additional thing to my plate. And it felt like I would finish work and I'd race through work, and then I'd race to go get my kids, and then we'd come home, and then I would be on all evening. And it just felt like I was always doing. And I just didn't have enough energy to keep up. And when I took some time away, I recognized that this is my pattern, that if you're listening, there's a high likelihood that you have this pattern too, because we tend to draw people in who are like us. And a lot of my clients, and it's funny, I've coached my clients on this many times and I didn't recognize the pattern that I was slipping into until I stepped away, is that I was overdoing for everyone else and not doing enough for myself. And that's why I felt so like drained and done and like I was always rushing and like I didn't have enough time by the end of 2025. And it's not to say that I don't appreciate or I'm not happy that I did those things, because and then we're going to get into what I mean by overflow. But one of the challenges that I think that I hear a lot from potential clients, current clients, of fear is that you're not going to get the same results as you do one-on-one in a group, right? Whether or not you've run groups before, or whether it's your first time, you've run them before. And some of my clients have said, oh my gosh, my last round felt traumatizing. Or maybe it was just stressful or whatever. Is sometimes it can feel like a real big jump to go from one-on-one to a group. Especially if you're like me and you're someone who's a very deeply feeling, deeply caring person and you want to make sure everyone is doing well. But for me, one of the things that I'm going to recommend more and more to my clients, because this is what I did all of most of 2025 and even a bit into 2024, was you don't have to go all or nothing. And I did a lot of one-on-ones to support my group as I refined and improved my IP, like my methodology in my programs. And so I'm really glad that I did that, because now I'm at a point where I've had so many one-on-one calls and I see where people get hung up and I see where people get stuck and I see what people need support with. And I really have a clear idea how it needs to be refined to the next level. because I've had so many one-on-one calls. And so my encouragement for you is if you've ever felt that fear that you're not going to get the same results in a group as you do one-on-one, do one-on-one calls with your group. Like, it's simple. Like, you can slowly evolve into a group container. It doesn't need to be all or nothing. And when you have those one-on-one calls, it's like these little checkpoints. They're kind of like guardrails. Like, they help catch people to make sure they're still getting results. And also it helps you get a sense of where they're at and what you need to refine and improve in your group calls and your core curriculum, all of that kind of stuff. The thing that was happening though was that I was spending so much time in one-on-one calls. And I mean, so much time. And at the end of 2025, I was working 5 days a week. I'd like to maybe cut that down sometimes and maybe take a day off here or there in 2026. But in 2025, I was working 5 days a week, but I had 1 day a week when my kids were in after school care. But generally speaking, I work from like 9 to 2-ish, 9:30 to 2, 9:30 to 2:30, except for that 1 day a week. So it's not like I work like a crazy number of hours. But my days were so jam-packed full. Like, I had to eventually block out time on my calendar just to eat lunch because I was so full. And what I see with that is it worked really, really well to be able to understand what my curriculum needed to develop into, my methodology, what I needed for my group calls and all that kind of stuff. The challenge though was I was getting to the point where I was spending so much time in those calls that I didn't actually have time to update my core content. And so I was learning all these things and not being able to implement them. So that's what I want to be able to do in 2026. So my word for this year is overflow. And what I mean by overflow is I would like to really set the intention to have an overflow in many ways, in many areas in my life. So overflow, of course, of money and finances. That's always something that I consider in business. Of course, I'm sure you do too, right? But not just around money and having more than enough in my business and just in our family and all of that kind of stuff. The other way that I want to have more overflow is overflow of energy and time and not feeling so scheduled and like every hour of the day or every minute of the day is accounted for. So I want to like spend more time in overflow and feeling like that freedom of time. One of the things that I actually used to coach teachers on is I used to help teachers stop working evenings and weekends, right? And I would help them with that through their curriculum, how they were planning things, like how they were setting up their classes, their lessons, all of that kind of stuff, and through their systems and also through their beliefs and how they were approaching their boundaries and things like that. And oftentimes what I saw is that teachers would say to me, I just don't have enough time. And I could hear myself thinking that same thing and notice that thought that I just don't have enough time. But I know that time is an illusion. It's just about your priorities. It's how you're spending your energy. It's not that you have like a specific amount of time that it's dwindling. But I was starting to feel that way because so much of my time was spent on other priorities. And so what I want to do this year to have more overflow is what I used to actually coach my clients on. And I'm curious, even as you're listening to this, have you ever had that experience where the same thing that you need to actually apply is the thing that you coach people on? And you're like, oh, right, I attract people who are like me and I need to apply the same thing to my own life when I coach my clients. And so one of the things that I'm going to be shifting in 2026 is before I would have my calendar in theory was open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, but it really wasn't. I took calls every single day and they were kind of like disjointed. So I'd have sometimes I'd have back-to-back calls or I'd have a number of calls and then I have a little block of time and then a call and then I have to go get my kids. And it was kind of like everything was very fragmented. And one of the things that I used to coach people on was to batch. And I didn't have time to batch because I had so many different calls. So now I'm going to be batching my time. And this is actually kind of an intro into what I'm going to be sharing on the next few episodes. Is my next series is going to be how I organize my days, my weeks, and my months as a business owner and as a coach. But one of the ways that I want to add more overflow is to have very concentrated time. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be my call days where I have group calls, discovery calls, one-on-one calls. All of that stuff is going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So even maybe calls with my team. I might have to shift that to another day, but by and large, most of my calls are going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays so that I have a little bit more white space. I even need to cut down on things as much, but I know I can't necessarily always say yes right away at my own expense, which I tend to do every once in a while. Like I won't eat or, those kinds of things. Or I'll say yes to my kids all the time at my own expense. So I want to make sure that I protect my energy a little bit more and only have calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I have more white space to batch things. Like today, I'm batching podcasts. So my wonderful podcast editor, Rebecca, doesn't have to scramble, and I have more podcast episodes ready for her. And so she has more time, all that kind of stuff. So that's my overflow. I want to have more overflow of energy, overflow of feeling like I have more time, more energy, more abundance, of course. So that's really my goal for 2026. And like, I was even thinking, like, one of the things that I recognize myself doing, and I share all of these things because you might recognize yourself doing this too, is if you're a mom or you're in some sort of caring position, is I was realizing like every night I was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner and it was like 9:30, 9:45. And I had been trying to do it for hours, but I had continually stopped and started because my kids needed me, or it was bedtime, or it was like reading with my son. We're currently reading Harry Potter. It's so fun. But there's always something that I was being interrupted, that I was finally finishing so late, and it was so draining. And the more like I know, and you likely know too, like the more you can put guardrails around actually like creating something, completing it, and doing it without interruption, the more you're going to feel like you have more time, right? So that's one boundary I put up, that I need to have it completed within like, 20, 30 minutes is a reasonable amount of time. So I'm not completely like cleaning up late at night. And the same is going to be true in my business. So I'm not just going to start a project and then have a call and then start a thing and then like respond to messages on my Telegram groups and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm going to have more concentrated batched time, so it feels more in flow and less like hyper scheduled in my day. So that's my word for 2026. I'm curious if any of this has resonated with you, if you can relate to any of that. I know I'm a very ambitious person, but I'm also like a very giving person, and it sometimes can be at my own expense. And I know if you're listening, you're likely like that as well sometimes. And the last kind of big idea that I want to touch on for you as you listen is that one of the things that I think is kind of feels a little bit odd in business is that you're allowed to run your business your way, because that's what actually makes it more sustainable in the long run. Like one of the things I was thinking to myself is like, when I used to coach teachers, one of the things they really struggled with was their grading piles, their marking piles. And I always thought like, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because they're the ones who assigned all of those assignments in the first place to give themselves all this massive amount of marking to do. I'm like, assign less stuff. And I mean, I had other strategies obviously other than that, but that was one of the main ones, is like, why are you doing so much? And I was feeling the same. I was like, I have so much work to do in my business and in my home life. And I've chosen every single thing that I have on my to-do list. Like I have created this life that I've created my business. And so I want to run it in a little bit more of a sustainable way that honors my energy and everything. And so I want you to think about that as well. Are you running your business right now in a way that actually feels supportive for you, that is sustainable in the long run, that you are allowed to run your business the way that works for you? So for me, I mean, I'm not shy. I'm quite outgoing, but I definitely am more of an introvert. I like to have a lot of quiet, and I especially since becoming a mom, my kids are so loud. I don't know if you can relate to that if you were a mom, or if maybe your kids are even grown now and you remember what it's like. But I really, really like having like quiet space, and I love to be able to plan. I also love to have time to really multiply myself and do something once that will serve me over and over and over again. So instead of always repeating yourself in the same ways in one-on-one calls, like creating a core curriculum that you can have that foundation that's there that people can learn from you without you having to be on all the time. For example, like even now I have my core curriculum for both my programs, but I want to refine it. I want to up-level it. I'm adding things like how to create your own signature frameworks to pilot to signature program design, how to have your own clear methodology, all these things that I want to add and refine. And I've been talking about in one-on-one calls, but I want to make sure that I actually have space to create those things so that I feel like that energy is multiplied. Like the thing I do helps, I'm able to use that multiple times. And so for me in my business, what I really love is I love to be able to do one-on-one calls. I love to be able to do group calls. I love to connect with people. That's why I don't have a course specific model business that's like a done DIY course. I like to have coaching, but I also know that I like to have more space, more quiet, more time to myself, more time to create things, space to even like, clean up my house and declutter and just have some like quiet space because my days feel very full on when my kids are home. And so even that, I was like, oh, am I allowed to only have calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays? But then I thought, yeah, you're always allowed to create the business that you want because that's what's going to allow you to keep doing it and even do it sustainably. And I think that's true in even like in many roles, like in teaching for sure. I used to teach my clients to do that. Like you need to create the way you're teaching, because I used to help people who were thinking about leaving the profession, is if you're not running your classroom the way that really supports you, you're not going to be able to continue doing it, right? And the same is true for our businesses. We get to choose absolutely everything, and you get to run your business in the way that you want to, that is reflective of your energy and your needs and what you want to do. And honestly, when we think about, oh, I couldn't possibly do it that way because that way won't work. Like if you wanted to have more of a course business, or you wanted to have more of a one-on-one business or a signature program or whatever, or a longer term, whatever it is that you're telling yourself, if you ever hear yourself think, oh, but I couldn't possibly do that, because that's a limitation that you've created for yourself. It's not actually truth. So for example, one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is I want to make my signature program design coaching program longer. I want it to be a little bit longer so it feels more spacious, more overflow for my clients so they can work in a deeper way with me, all that kind of stuff. And at first I heard my brain think, well, I can't do that because it needs to be a 4-month program, or like, what if people don't want to commit for that long or something like that, even though people renew all the time at the end of 4 months. And then I thought, like, that's not actually true. It's just that this is the way I've always done it. So it feels comfortable to my brain, but that's a limitation that I've created for myself. I can absolutely have a longer term container. Like I'm allowed to do that. That's absolutely possible for me. It's just that I had created this version of what my business could look like. And we do that all the time. So if ever you're thinking like, oh, I would really love to be able to run my business that way, or I can't because, or whatever, just recognize that that's not actually truth. That's just a belief that's coming up for you. You get to run your business in a way that supports you, in a way that fuels you, so you can show up in overflow and really give to your clients from like when you have that extra overflowing like energy for them, you get to run your business the way that you want to. And so that's what I'm reminding myself as well, so that I can really show up present and engaged for my clients. Honestly, I always do. I think it's just that it comes at my expense. I always show up present for my kids and my clients, but then it sometimes can come at my expense. So that is what's going to make it sustainable for you in the long run. And it's what's going to make it sustainable for me too. So I'm reminding myself of that for that as well. So let's recap what we talked about in this week's episode. So the first thing was I shared my word for the year, and that is overflow. And the lesson that I needed to relearn is that I often end up overgiving to my clients at my own expense, or overgiving to my family at my own expense. And I need to make sure that I'm also protecting my own energy as well. And it's something that I coach my clients on. So maybe that'd be something that you can think about for you as well. We talked about how I bridged the gap from one-on-one to a group format. And that was through intentional one-on-ones alongside my group. I don't do as many one-on-ones now. It's an upgrade that's an option in signature program design, but it's not everyone will opt for that. But I can do that now because over time, I've done so many one-on-ones with alongside my group. I see where people get stuck. I see what people need, and I can put that into my system and my structure, my methodology. And so if you're worried about going from one-to-one to a group, like do hybrid, use one-on-ones alongside your group, because eventually you'll be able to it's so much of an easier transition into a group when you do that. And the last thing we talked about is how when you give yourself permission to run your business on your own terms and not listen to the limitations that your mind may place on you, that you get to run it on your own terms. That's what really makes your business sustainable in the long run and allows you to continue your business. I've been in business for 7.5, coming up 8 years in a couple of months. And I've been through ups and downs in my business, but I know whenever I kind of get off balance, the more I can remember to like, what do I need? What do I want my business to look like? What lights me up? What do I love to do? Then I'm able to give more and do more for other people. And that's why I've been able to continue running my business for as long as I have. So absolutely, you are allowed to run your business on your own terms. And this thought about overflow is going to be shaking up a little bit about how I'm running my time in my business. And it's a question actually that I got from a client recently, and I wanted to create a series on it, is how I organize my days, my weeks, and my months as a coach. And so I'm going to be starting that series next week. We're going to be diving in so that you can think about how you want to run your days, your weeks, and your months as a coach in 2026. And even if you're listening to this later on, of course, it's still going to be relevant for you. But it's how I schedule my time and how I set things up so that my business feels like it's in overflow, and also how it feels profitable, how I set time up for my team, how I run my programs, how I actually balance marketing and selling along with delivery, all of that kind of stuff. We're going to be diving into that in next week's series that starts next week. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. If this is the first time that you're listening to this podcast, welcome. So thrilled to have you. And if you found this episode helpful, or any of the episodes that you've listened to before, I would absolutely love it if you could leave me a review on your podcast episode of choice. One of my goals this year is to grow the podcast now that I have a real solid rhythm of how I'm creating it. So I would love to be able to grow the podcast. And one of the best ways to do that is for people to discover the podcast is to have reviews, as I'm sure you know. So if you could leave me a review, it would be so appreciated for 2026. And I will see you on next week's episode of the Program Design Podcast.